In a tavern, an adventurer mentions the dreaded triple S rank dungeon that is known to be unbeatable. Then another adventurer replies that it is impossible for anyone not to know this dungeon that is so famous these days. She comments that even the greatest legends failed, like a level 99 mage and 300 stealth fighters, because on the deepest floors, it is said that the strongest being of all time reigns as the final boss. Meanwhile, a group of adventurers is at the tower's entrance, wondering if they will be able to get in. One of the men gets furious because the difficulty seems to be even greater than all the rumors said. At that moment, a system screen appears in front of them with a very clear warning message. The screen informs them that they do not meet the requirements, as they need to be at least level 999. With that, the group leader panics and says that no one will be able to clear this, so he orders everyone to fall back. From afar, Toya watches the group leaving and comments that they also did not meet the entry requirements. But he says that even if they managed to enter, they would still have to get past his monster army first. One of his subordinates then says that they will not let anyone get anywhere near their boss. The protagonist thanks everyone for their loyalty, but he seems to have something more to say about the dungeon. He reveals that he is the triple S rank dungeon boss, and his role is to protect all the monsters living there. The young man then thinks that the modern society of the 21st century is a broken game with a huge imbalance among the players. He reflects on how people's lives are constantly ranked, from school all the way to the workplace. If you have a high ranking, people admire you and look up to you as if you were a king. However, if your rank is low, everyone looks down on you, and leveling up is like playing on the hardest mode. We see the face of Amira Hitoya, who cannot see himself being happy if his life continues like this forever. The young man feels very tired of it all, when suddenly something catches his attention and surprises him. Suddenly, a speeding truck appears right in front of him, about to hit him head-on. The young man wakes up in a dark place and wonders where he is while seeing a skeletal hand. He looks at his own hand and gets very confused to see that it is just a bunch of bones. In a panic, he screams desperately because he does not understand what happened to his form. And it is not just his hand, because his legs have also turned to bone, making him even more scared. His entire body is a skeleton, and a status screen identifies him as a level 5 undead. Hitoya cannot understand what is happening and wonders if this is some kind of game. Then he remembers being struck by that truck and gets more confused about where he is. Another system window pops up saying he is in an F-rank dungeon called the Forest Mausoleum. Out of nowhere, the boy hears a very cute sound coming from somewhere near him. The skeleton is surprised and looks in the direction the noise came from to see what it is. Then, a small level 1 white wolf appears in front of him, looking like a cute little pup. He wonders if that is really a wolf, because it looks more like a harmless puppy. Feeling scared, the protagonist asks if the creature is going to bite him, but the little wolf just stares at him confused. To his surprise, the little creature jumps into his lap and nestles between his bones. The small wolf then curls up comfortably and ends up falling asleep right there. Hitoya calms down and thinks that maybe that little animal is harmless after all. With that, he seems to have a moment of epiphany and looks up with a surprised expression. The young man observes the forest around him, with its trees and leaves falling slowly. He then thinks that maybe this new place is not as bad as he initially imagined. Suddenly, a red screen appears with a danger alert for our protagonist. The system warns that a challenger has been detected, and the skeleton is confused by the message. Even the small wolf looks scared and starts trembling with fear at the warning. At that moment, a voice says it found its prey very early and points a crossbow in their direction. The boy turns around, startled, and wonders who is there, but he has no time to react. An arrow flies quickly and hits our protagonist's skull dead on. With the impact of the arrow, the skeleton ends up falling to the ground, completely immobilized. The little wolf manages to narrowly dodge another arrow that almost hits it too. But unfortunately, the little creature is struck right after and falls next to Hitoya. The youth feels his consciousness fading slowly, and everything starts to go dark. A hunter approaches the two fallen figures and says he got another easy batch of materials. Seeing the man approach, the boy gets a bad feeling about what is going to happen. The hunter's silhouette looks like a shadowy fiend, and Hitoya wonders if he is going to be defeated again. Suddenly, the little wolf appears on top of his head and starts whimpering. The skeleton wakes up confused with the little creature on his head and wonders if he is still functioning. He looks at his hand and wonders if fading away and becoming an undead was all just a dream. While petting the little wolf, he realizes that he definitely got taken down moments ago, because he remembers seeing the hunter harvesting materials from the small wolf right in front of him. And he also recalls seeing the man taking the fangs from the creature's tiny form. Hitoya saw the human doing all that while he was down and unable to move. He remembers the hunter holding one of the little wolf's battle-worn fangs. Then the man smiles sinisterly while holding the animal's form like a trophy. The hunter also said there was a good market for undead ribs. And after that, the man simply pulled the protagonist's bones out one by one. The skeleton still remembers the awful pain he felt in that moment of despair. But the alert system sounds again, warning that a new challenger has been detected. Hitoya panics because he cannot believe more humans have already shown up to hunt him. He thinks he will be defeated again and needs to hide as fast as possible to stay safe. The young man picks up the frightened little wolf and says the pet is coming with him to a safe place. Hiding, he sees two adventurers mocking how easy it is to clear that dungeon. The two men laugh, and the protagonist wonders why he always gets such typical bad guys as challengers. The protagonist gets annoyed and confused hearing what they are saying about the monsters. One of the hunters comments that the place is full of monsters that can be turned into ingredients. His friend agrees and says it is a great way to blow off steam and then head out to the entertainment district. With a smile on his face, the other guy says he will not stop his daily hunts. Hitoya hugs the little wolf and realizes he really ended up in another world with dungeons. He thinks he has seen this same story in manga, but he should have become a hero. But instead, he respawned as a weak monster in an F-ranked dungeon. The boy realizes he is treated as easy farming material by the challengers. And the worst part is that in this nightmare, even if he is taken down, he will always come back to suffer again. The skeleton looks at the small wolf in his lap and has a sudden realization. He realizes the little creature has also gone through this awful loop several times by his side. Suddenly, one of the hunters finds them and attacks with his sword without mercy. The little wolf yelps in fright seeing the sudden attack coming their way. Hitoya panics and tries to run, wondering how they were discovered so fast. The hunter is confused, having never seen it running before, and wonders what that is. With that, the protagonist flees with the little wolf to try and escape defeat once again. But the archer says it is no problem because the target will go down if hit by his arrows. As two arrows fly toward him, the boy wonders if he is going to get eliminated again. He falls into despair, thinking he will keep getting taken out repeatedly forever. The two arrows hit the skeleton's back dead on, and he cries out in pain from the impact. The small wolf gets scared seeing its friend hit right in front of it. The two end up falling to the ground, defeated once again by the dungeon hunters. The youth stays on the ground, lacking the strength to get up after being hit by the arrows. By his side, the little wolf is also down while the skeleton watches it with sadness. With no chance to defend himself, the other hunter attacks the protagonist with his sword. The two men mockingly say the dungeon only has junk monsters and is easy to clear. One of the hunters then steps on the fallen skeleton's head with a look of disdain. He says he will start the takedown with the little wolf lying defenseless on the ground. With that, the other adventurer readies his sword to deal the final blow to the little creature. Seeing the hunter about to attack, Hitoya says he will not allow that under any circumstances. He decides that if they hunt him for being easy, then he will become a dungeon no one can clear. At that moment, a system window pops up warning that a secret quest has been activated and the dungeon boss has appeared. The fallen skeleton on the ground begins to glow intensely with a mysterious blue energy. The archer gets confused by the blue flame that suddenly appears on the monster's body. The young man remembers that in his past life, he thought people like him did not matter and that nothing could change. But now he is determined to change himself and his destiny with his own hands. With that, a blinding light erupts and surprises the two hunters who do not understand anything. A warning screen appears alerting about the monster's evolution, and Hitoya feels the power flowing through his body. He gains a humanoid form, and his eyes glow with the new energy filling him. The other hunter is shocked and asks if the undead just evolved and gained a human face. But the archer mocks him, saying that even after evolving, a weakling from an F-ranked dungeon is still a weakling. They prepare to attack and say they will fill him with arrows and then take down the wolf. With a serious expression on his new face, the protagonist states once again that he will not allow it. Then the boy disappears in the blink of an eye, leaving the two hunters confused and surprised. He reappears in the air right above them, ready to strike as the two look up in shock. With incredible speed, he lands a powerful kick on the archer's face, sending him to the ground. The warrior fails to understand what happened as Hitoya stops in front of his fallen partner. The remaining hunter gets furious at the situation and shouts in anger at the sudden attack. The protagonist then transforms his arm into a sharp blade and faces the last opponent. With his eyes glowing, the protagonist observes the man without saying a word. The warrior is shocked because Hitoya cut his steel sword with his own tail. Seeing his partner get up, the man furiously yells that he is useless. The archer gets annoyed and says he will shoot until he finishes the monster once and for all. He then fires several arrows in a row, hoping they will work this time. But to his surprise, the boy does not even move and faces the arrows coming his way. The arrows shatter upon hitting the protagonist's body without leaving a single scratch. The hunter panics upon seeing the dungeon boss's name and unknown level. With an intimidating look, Hitoya tells the two men never to return there again. The archer realizes they cannot win and yells to his friend that they need to run. They run desperately toward the dungeon exit to save themselves. But the protagonist uses his powers to close the dungeon gate right in front of them. The archer gets confused and looks back, not understanding what is happening with the exit. He sees the gate closing quickly, and the warrior is already on the other side in safety. The man becomes desperate and yells for his friend to wait for him, not wanting to be left behind. He begs for help, but his selfish partner does not care at all and flees alone. The warrior says he will not wait and abandons his friend to face the monster alone. The gate closes completely, and the archer is trapped in the darkness, screaming in terror. Hitoya looks at the scene with a mix of relief and surprise at having managed to win. He stays silent for a moment, processing everything that just happened there. After the battle, Hitoya kneels and looks at the lifeless form of the small wolf. With a worried expression, he wonders if the little creature will really come back this time. He fears the little animal might not return, but then the wolf pup's form begins to glow brightly. With that, the boy is surprised by the golden light emanating from his little friend. The protagonist watches the light coming from the ground, illuminating the entire forest around him. At that moment, the light intensifies and bursts into a very strong golden flash. From the burst of light, the small wolf reemerges fully healed and happy as before. With a relieved smile, the youth sees his friend return and hugs him affectionately. He then thankfully expresses his relief that his companion is okay and well once again. But right after, his expression changes to one of complete shock and confusion. The boy notices his tail and wonders why only his face has skin on his body. With that, a status screen appears in front of him to clear up his doubts about his new form. The system window identifies him as a dungeon boss, but his level is still unknown. Then he finally understands that he became the dungeon boss and is left speechless. Meanwhile, the warrior who escaped reports that a dungeon boss appeared in an F rank. The bandit named Bodo says the undead evolved and that they will need a dragon to win. But his boss, Jilden, mocks him and says it is shameful to fail in an F-ranked dungeon. A shadowy figure emerges and says it is a joke to be unable to handle weak monsters. Trembling, Bodo stutters his boss's name as the dark presence intimidates him. The boss calls him useless, and a giant creature appears to deal with him without mercy. The shadowy boss asks Jilden if he kept going to that dungeon all this time. With a smile on his face, Jilden confirms he did and respectfully calls him boss. The leader then orders him to wipe out all the wolves and test the two-headed baby dragon. He says that even with a new boss, the place is weak, and orders the dragon to destroy everything. The shadowy figure then turns around and orders everyone to leave and fulfill the mission immediately. Jilden smiles at the dragon and says they are his tools and must be useful. Inside the cage, the dragon's two heads stare at the man in silence with glowing eyes. He gets annoyed by the creature's defiant glare and asks what is wrong with them. Jilden says useless tools get sold and that they need to prove their worth. Back in the dungeon, Hitoya explores the place with the little wolf on his shoulder and is surprised. He smells ancient ruins and compares the size of the place to a football stadium. The boy pets the small wolf and says that was not exactly what he expected. Seeing a darker area in the forest, he decides to go deeper to see what he finds. But after walking a bit, he realizes the place seems to be just pure nature. Even so, the youth finds it odd and thinks there must be some kind of creature around there. Suddenly, the little wolf starts barking, and the protagonist turns around without understanding why. He then realizes his friend sensed something and wonders if there is anything nearby. Hitoya goes on alert as he feels a strange presence approaching them in the forest. At that moment, a purple mist appears in several spots around him and the small wolf. The little creature barks, and to Hitoya's surprise, another identical white wolf appears in front of him. The protagonist is surprised as a second wolf, identical to his friend, appears out of nowhere. Right after, several other level 1 wolves appear, and the boy is shocked by the amount. He yells in panic as he realizes there is a ton of them approaching quickly. But the little creatures look more like puppies and start doing a welcome dance for him. Hitoya gets curious about the situation and then notices something strange deep in the forest. He spots a green light coming from behind some trees and wonders what it could be. Upon getting closer, the youth is amazed to find a field of glowing mushrooms. The boy finds the scene mystical and did not know things like that existed inside the dungeon. The system screen identifies the mushrooms as being level 1, and he is surprised. Then he notices the little wolves are everywhere and wonders if they are really just mushrooms. At that moment, the protagonist seems to have an epiphany and understands what is happening. He sees that both the wolves and the mushrooms are only level 1 and very weak. With this, the boy concludes that the wolves are as strong as the mushrooms, meaning not strong at all. He realizes the only monsters he has found were about 30 of these little wolves. The young man understands that only very weak monsters live in the F-rank dungeon. He looks at the entrance and sees that the requirement to enter is just being level 1 or higher. Hitoya then remembers the hunters and understands why they target this place to farm. While he reflects on this, the small wolf rubs against his leg affectionately. Suddenly, the little creature nips him, and the boy gets startled, not understanding what got into it. But the little wolf was just snuggling and rubbing its head on his leg in a cute way. The young man looks at the little creatures with a thoughtful expression on his new face. He feels warmed by the animals but knows that in this world they are just materials. With a serious expression on his face, the boy decides he will protect all those creatures. Then he takes a cute moment to play a bit with the pack of little wolves. Hitoya realizes that staying near the gate is way too dangerous for the small animals. With a little wolf on his head, he tells everyone to return to the safety of the forest. The protagonist then leads the pack deep into the dungeon to protect them. Because he knows that if challengers arrive, they will be the first targets of the attacks. But suddenly his eyes catch a red reflection of a system alert. The warning screen appears in front of him, stating that a challenger has been detected in the dungeon. The boy panics and cannot believe someone is already invading his territory. The dungeon gate glows with a sinister energy while the alert remains active. At that moment, a mysterious voice orders the twin dragon to fly into the dungeon. Hitoya looks up frightened as he notices a powerful presence approaching. Then a massive level 51 two-headed dragon appears right in front of him. He is shocked by the surprise appearance, as he did not expect to find dragons there. Right after Jildan, the level 35 crossbow user, appears as well. The protagonist gets even more tense because now he has to deal with dragons and bandits. The bandit then orders the twin dragon to ignore the others and attack the dungeon boss. Seeing the imminent danger, he yells for the little wolves to run back to the forest. The dragon's two heads attack the protagonist at the same time with their sharp claws. He is surprised by the speed of the attack and tries to defend himself as best he can from the charge. But the little wolves are paralyzed with fear and cannot run away from the imminent danger. Hitoya panics and wonders if he will be able to protect all the wolves by himself. With sweat running down his face, he faces the threat with an expression of fear. He remembers the awful scene from before and fears everything will happen to them again. The little creature seems to feel his determination and turns to him with a confident look. With an encouraging bark, the small wolf joins the others to face the dragon. The youth is surprised by the pack's courage as they unite to fight by his side. The little wolves bark bravely, showing they will not abandon their new protector. They all gather in front of the protagonist to form a protective barrier. With an emotional smile, the boy thanks everyone for the help and feels more confident. Jildan laughs at the scene and says the hunt is more fun when the prey tries to run. Hitoya gets furious and says he will not let the bandit attack the wolves under any circumstances. With a mocking smile, the hunter calls him a feisty prey and glares at him with disdain. He then orders the dragon to prove its power if it does not want to be discarded as useless. One of the creature's heads opens its mouth and starts charging a blue energy sphere. The system screen warns that a twin dragon skill has suddenly been activated. The protagonist wonders what this skill is and prepares for the incoming attack. The dragon then fires a powerful blue energy beam toward Hitoya and the wolves. The blue energy beam hits the ground, and the protagonist barely manages to dodge it. He looks back and is surprised by what happened after the attack's impact. The beam froze the ground instantly, and the boy realizes the strength of the enemy's power. He understands it is not normal fire, as it has the ability to freeze whatever it touches. With that, he runs away while the dragon's other head flies in his direction. Then the second head opens its mouth and charges a red energy sphere. The protagonist leaps to the side to dodge the attack that explodes upon hitting the ground. The explosion creates a sea of flames that burns everything around with intense heat. The boy is startled by the scene, as the fire is so hot it melts the ground itself. The heat melts the earth, and he is impressed by the dragon's destructive power. He notices one head breathes fire that freezes and the other breathes fire that melts. The young man understands that skills are like special moves in video games, and everyone has one. He deduces that one head has the freezing flame skill, and the other has the melting heat skill. The boy then wonders if the bandit watching the fight also has a skill. He questions if he himself might also have a special skill to use in battle. Hitoya then focuses and notices a new system window appearing in front of him. The screen informs him that a skill is available and he can activate it whenever he wants. The protagonist gets excited and wonders if he can really activate a skill right now. He focuses, and the system window confirms that activating the skill is possible. The screen reveals his skill is Rebirth, which revives him and acquires the challenger's skills. Hitoya is shocked to understand his skill brings him back and even copies his enemy's skills. But the hunter gets annoyed by the protagonist's distraction and yells for him to focus on the fight. With that, the bandit fires a volley of purple arrows toward the boy to eliminate him. The arrows fly at high speed, but something very strange happens halfway there. The protagonist is confused and wonders what happened as the arrows simply vanished. Suddenly, the arrows reappear right in front of him and narrowly miss hitting him directly. The hunter calls him a feisty prey, and the system reports that his skill was activated. Hitoya understands the shooter's skill is active, and that explains the disappearing arrows. He realizes the arrow vanished for a moment, which is why he was almost hit. The youth dodges another arrow while the dragon attacks him from behind with its sharp claws. He figures out the skill makes the arrows invisible, and says he needs to take down the shooter. Then the boy starts running to get closer to the enemy while dodging the dragon's attacks. Jildan laughs and challenges him, asking how long he will be able to keep running. With that, the protagonist sprints at top speed to try and find an opening in the attack. But suddenly, he hears a sharp cry of pain coming from somewhere near him in the fight. To his surprise, the shooter's arrow ended up hitting the dragon instead of him. The hunter calls the dragon useless and threatens it, saying he might turn it into a decoration. Hitoya is outraged by the scene and asks why he attacked his own ally in battle. The bandit calls him an idiot and says monsters are not allies to him in any way. He explains that monsters are tools meant to serve humans and be discarded. With that, the hunter gives an evil laugh while the dragon writhes in pain on the ground. Hitoya then understands that in that world, monsters are seen merely as disposable tools. He remembers how humans use and abuse the creatures without a single ounce of remorse. But the boy thinks differently and recalls the happy moments with the little wolf. Suddenly, the twin dragon thrashes, and the magic chains begin to break little by little. The two heads look at each other with determination, as if they had decided to rebuild together. Jildan is confused by the creature's reaction and does not understand what is happening there. Taking advantage of the distraction, the protagonist charges at high speed toward the enemy. In the blink of an eye, the youth appears right in front of the hunter, who is completely surprised. With a furious look, Hatoya shouts that to him, monsters are not disposable tools. He then attacks the bandit, who tries to block the strike using his crossbow as a shield. But the man is shocked to see his weapon and the dragon's chains shatter from the attack. With his opponent disarmed, the protagonist glares at him and asks what he will do now. The hunter panics, being completely defenseless without his weapon to protect himself. Desperate, he yells to the dragon and orders the creature to come protect him immediately. But the beast's two heads just stare at him in silence, disobeying his attack order. The bandit screams for the dragon to move, but it remains still, showing no reaction. Furious, Jolden calls the creature useless trash and curses at its sudden disobedience. Then the dragon flies up high and glares at its former master with a threatening look. One of the heads opens its mouth and charges an energy sphere, ready to strike the man. The hunter panics and cannot believe he is being betrayed by his own creature. Then the dragon fires a powerful ice beam at its former master without mercy. The man cries out in pain as his form is completely frozen by the beast's attack. With a look of hatred, the dragon takes revenge for all the mistreatment it suffered from the human. With that, the bandit's frozen form shatters into 1,000 pieces, bringing his time to an end. The system screen reports that the level 35 challenger failed to clear the dungeon. Right after, another window pops up in front of Hatoya saying a skill can be activated. He understands he met his skill's activation condition by defeating the challenger. With this, the protagonist decides to activate his special skill to see what happens. The window confirms that the sampling of the hunter's skill was completed successfully. The boy is enveloped by a new aura and acquires the enemy's stealth shot skill. Hatoya realizes his power is stealing the skills of the challengers who fail in the dungeon. At that moment, the twin dragon looks at him, confused by what just happened there. The creature growls at the protagonist and looks like it might attack him at any moment. Hatoya senses the dragon's hostility and goes on alert at the unexpected situation. But the youth asks the creature to wait, as he does not want to start another unnecessary fight. He apologizes to the dragon for scaring it, and the beast is surprised by his attitude. With his eyes now purple, the boy says he has no intention of fighting against it. He says he might look like a strange monster, but he poses no threat to the creature. Then a new skill screen, exclusive to the dungeon boss, appears in front of him. Hatoya is surprised, having never seen a golden window like this one, and wonders about the exclusive skill. The screen states that the exclusive boss skill is to add new monsters to the forest dungeon. The protagonist is in shock and cannot believe he just gained a second skill so quickly. He understands the new skill allows him to add monsters to strengthen the dungeon's defenses. With that in mind, the youth looks at the twin dragon with a new idea on his face. Then a new window pops up asking if he wants to add the level 51 dragon to the dungeon. The boy gets very excited, realizing he can turn the dragon into a monster for his dungeon. Another golden window appears and reveals the name of his second exclusive boss skill. He thinks that with this skill, he can turn the dragon into a monster that belongs to the dungeon. The youth knows that having a dragon that breathes fire and ice would be a huge boost to his defenses. But he thinks that this dungeon is a place the challengers will always target to farm. He tells the creature that the guy controlling it is gone and that it can return to the outside world. With a sincere look, the protagonist then asks the dragon what it really wants to do now. The creature remembers how its former master treated it merely as an obedient tool. The two heads then look at each other for a moment, as if conversing in silence. The dragon thinks Hatoya is a weird guy, since he could have forced it to stay under his control. But the creature feels it does not hate him, and seems to have made an important decision about its future. Suddenly, the dragon's two heads approach the boy and leave him a bit startled. The youth asks in surprise if the creature is really going to stay and become part of his dungeon. With a nod, the twin dragon confirms its decision and accepts the protagonist's invitation. With a smile on his face, the protagonist thanks the dragon for its decision to stay. With that, the boy activates his skill to add the creature as a new monster. The system screen then confirms that the level 51 dragon has been added. He notices the dragon's injury has healed and understands that everyone recovers. At that moment, the youth hears a familiar sound coming from the forest and gets curious. Suddenly, the pack of little wolves comes running and barking happily at him. The little creatures seem very excited to see their protector back and safe. Hatoya feels relieved and asks the wolf pack if everyone is okay. The system reports that the number of challengers is 0, and the dragon is surprised by this. The small wolves then rub against the boy to show all their affection. The lead little wolf thinks that, because of the youth, he managed to protect everyone. With that, the protagonist gently pets his small and loyal friend's head. With a smile on his face, the boy thanks the little animal for its courage and loyalty. The little creature gets all happy and blushes at its new protector's praise. Then they all start celebrating their victory and the safety of the dungeon together. The youth sits on the ground and enjoys the moment with his new and cute companions. He remembers that he could not protect them before, but today everyone survived. The boy hugs one of the little wolves and is happy to have finally kept everyone safe. For the first time, the protagonist feels he managed to move forward and change his fate. One of the little wolves climbs onto his shoulder and comments that he might even have a human face. One of the dragon's heads asks the youth if he is human, since he does not look like one. At that, Hatoya is shocked and yells out, asking if the creature can actually speak. After that, the boy climbs a tree to observe the dungeon's massive forest. The dragon mentions that it informed the protagonist about what kind of people come to the dungeon. It reveals that the word challenger there basically means a group called the Ryuseizokyu, and that this gang captures dungeon monsters to sell them as weapons or materials. The youth gets indignant and asks if they will really come back to that dungeon again. The creature confirms, saying their leader will come to clear the dungeon someday. The dragon comments that their leader's strength is on a completely different level. Hitoya realizes these must be memories the creature would rather forget. With a sad look, the dragon's two heads turn away, seeming to confirm his thought. The protagonist then thanks the creature for telling him everything anyway. With that, the boy raises a finger and says he has a suggestion for what they should do now. He asks everyone to stay deep inside the dungeon while he stands guard alone. His plan is to watch the only gate from a high place so he can react to any attack. The dragon's two heads stare at the protagonist in silence, processing his strategy. But the small wolf on his shoulder looks worried and lets out a tiny whimper of fear. The youth pets the little animal and tells it not to worry because everything will be fine. Even so, he looks at a system screen and admits it is not like he is not anxious. Then he remembers his rebirth skill, which copies the skills of those who fail. With this, he understands that the more enemies he defeats, the stronger he can become. He will fight the challengers to gather skills and take down the dragon invaders. The boy knows peace might not last, but he will do what he can with the strength he has now. Suddenly, everyone is startled by something unexpected happening inside the dungeon. Then a red warning screen pops up, announcing that a challenger has been detected. Hidden among the leaves, the protagonist realizes the invaders have finally arrived. With a sinister purple energy, the dungeon gate slowly begins to open. A group of hunters with dragon marks on their bodies appears at the dungeon entrance. Their leader says Julden stole the dragon and ran off, but that he will be caught one day. From high in the tree, Hitoya sees that they are the dragon hunters, and there are many of them. The youth gets tense at this, as he has never fought against so many people at once. Then two invaders chat about betting on who can get the highest takedown count. Hearing the men's conversation, the protagonist gets an expression of pure rage. He becomes furious that they dare turn monster lives into a sick game. The boy thinks that even outnumbered, he still has options and activates a skill. With this, the system activates the stealth shot skill, and a phantom attack begins to form. He plans to destroy their weapons with silence and precision to gain an advantage. An energy arrow hits one of the hunter's bows dead on and shatters it instantly. The man is completely shocked to see his weapon breaking right in his own hands. The other hunters are confused and wonder what that was and if it was an attack. One of the invaders mocks his friend, saying not to worry because it is just an F-rank dungeon. Hitoya then has an idea and wonders if they can use their skills without their weapons. He realizes that in this world, human abilities are powers that reside inside their weapons. The boy gets tense and breaks a cold sweat because if his theory is right, this changes everything for him. With that, one of the hunters activates his skill, and his halberd glows with a purple energy. But his weapon does not break from the attack, and the man is shocked by its durability. Hitoya then understands that if he breaks the invaders' weapons, he can neutralize them. With this new plan in mind, he fires another arrow that shatters one of their swords. The youth continues his attacks and destroys another invader's club with his mysterious power. The hunters panic as they cannot see the attacks destroying their weapons. One of the men activates a vision skill and finally finds Hitoya hiding in the tree. The protagonist realizes skills are not just for attacking and goes on high alert. Taking advantage of his discovery, an enemy activates the wind blade to attack him. With that, the attack flies at high speed toward the boy in the tree. Hitoya focuses and thinks he just needs to concentrate on dodging the skill attacks. He dodges the strike in mid-air while an invader orders everyone to attack at once. The hunters who still have their weapons charge all together at the protagonist. With a determined look, the youth says he will keep destroying their weapons non-stop. He will break every single weapon they dared to bring into his beloved dungeon. Having said that, the boy fires a new barrage of energy arrows at the invaders. The invaders are in shock and cannot believe the youth is so powerful. They understand that creature is not a weak F-rank monster like they thought. Frightened, one of the invaders says he is getting out of that place as fast as possible. He yells to everyone that he is falling back and leaving that dungeon immediately to survive. With that, the group of invaders starts fleeing in a panic toward the dungeon exit. The system screen then reports the names of all the hunters who retreated from the fight. Hitoya is surprised to see they are simply giving up and running from the battle. At that moment, a window pops up warning that a boss skill has been activated. The protagonist is confused by the message and does not understand what just happened. The screen reveals that he acquired the Wind Blade and Vision plus 10 skills. The boy is in shock, realizing he simply stole their abilities. Then he finally understands what his special skill actually does for real. He realizes that escaping the dungeon is the exact same thing as failing to clear it. And that means all the skills from the challengers who flee become his. But the invaders' leader gets furious and yells, asking if they are already running away. He reminds everyone that this place is an F-rank dungeon that is easy to clear. The man seems to have a plan and stares at the forest with a very determined look. He says that if they burn the forest down, they will swim in materials and activates his skill. The hunter yells that he will not leave without taking something down and fires a massive fireball. Seeing the fire attack, the pack of little wolves panics, terrified by the scene. With a furious look, the protagonist shouts that he will absolutely not let that happen. Then he activates the wind blade skill he just stole from one of the enemies. The blade flies at high speed and destroys the hunter's fireball in mid-air. But the attack does not stop, and it hits the man's arm head-on, making him cry out in pain from the impact. With that, the hunter falls to the ground defeated, and his friend is shocked by the unexpected scene. The invaders' leader wonders if the youth really used the skill and copied their powers. With a threatening look, the protagonist glares at the remaining hunters in the dungeon. Hitoya then firmly declares that this place is no longer a hunting ground for them. At that, all the leftover invaders panic and scream in terror at the monster. They flee desperately to try and escape that terrifying place in one piece. The boy watches the men running away and leaving all their weapons behind on the ground. With a heavy thud, the dungeon gate closes completely right in front of them. Now inside the dungeon, the protagonist stares at the entrance in silence for a moment. He then reflects on everything that happened and how he has changed since it all began. The youth remembers when he was just a skeleton and could not do absolutely anything. He recalls how he could not beat even a single person back in those days. But today, even facing a whole group, the battle's outcome was very different. The boy feels proud because he finally managed to protect all his monster friends. With a satisfied smile on his face, he tells himself that everything is okay now. Then he turns to the little creatures, who look at him with great happiness and relief. With that, the system screen reports that the number of challengers in the dungeon is now 0. Meanwhile, a man tells Overa that his henchmen failed to clear the dungeon. The dragon invaders' boss then mocks them, saying he does not remember having trash under his command. With a sinister look, he states that weaklings who are useless to him are just food for his pets. Pedro Deathless, the lord of the East Capital, asks if he fed the men to the great dragon. At that moment, the invaders' leader who fled arrives and calls out to his boss in deep fear. The man says they simply cannot clear that F-rank dungeon anymore under any circumstances. With a look of disdain, the dragon invaders' boss stares at him, not understanding at all. The hunter fearfully repeats that there is no way for them to clear that dungeon. Then he explains that the monster did not just copy all of their skills in the fight. Another hunter adds that the creature used multiple skills as if it were nothing. Alvaro mocks them and asks if they came back just to make excuses for failing. With an evil smile on his face, the boss calls all his subordinates useless garbage. Then a shadowy fiend-like silhouette with red eyes appears behind the frightened men. He says it is feeding time for the great dragon, and a giant mouth appears to consume them. The hunters scream in terror, seeing they will be a snack for their cruel boss's creature. Meanwhile, Pedro watches the scene with a smile and comments that it is a good show. But he takes a drink and says that even so, this whole story is very strange to him. He reflects that a boss should not even exist in an F-rank dungeon. Pedro then asks if Alvaro believes this, and the boss admits the story is suspicious. And he also mentions that the shooter and the twin dragon have not returned from that dungeon yet. Alvaro understands that rare monsters become rare materials, and that means a lot of money. With that, he gets interested in the unknown boss, and Pedro suggests to go see for himself. The invader's boss smiles and says he likes the idea of going there in person. But he demands that Pedro double his cut of the profits if he gets what he wants. Back at the dungeon, the protagonist observes the peaceful place after the big battle. He is resting in a tree when he hears the excited barks of the small wolf. The little creature seems very happy and runs back and forth with lots of energy. Hitoya climbs down from the tree and asks his friend what happened because such excitement. With a jump, the little wolf sits in front of him, waiting for him to follow it somewhere. Then the little animal runs deep into the forest, expecting the protagonist to follow along. The youth gets confused and wonders if something happened deeper in the dungeon. He decides to follow the little wolf to see what it wants to show him with such enthusiasm. They walk quite a bit, and the boy realizes they have gone very far into the forest. Suddenly, the small wolf stops in front of a familiar place with glowing mushrooms. Hitoya is surprised to see that it is the exact same place where he found the mushrooms before. The little wolf barks at him, and the youth does not understand what the pet means. With a curious look, the protagonist turns in the direction the little creature pointed. He then spots a giant, glowing golden gate in the middle of the dark forest. Shocked, the boy cannot believe his eyes and wonders what that giant door is. The boy is in shock and wonders what that giant door right in front of him is. He is sure it was not there before, while the little wolf seems quite happy. With a curious look, the youth slowly approaches the door to see what happens. Then, carefully he reaches out his hand and finally touches the gate's glowing surface. At that moment, a golden light explodes and knocks him back with the force of the impact. A system screen pops up and verifies his identity as the forest dungeon boss. The window then warns that the dungeon's ranking system has been activated, leaving him in shock. With that, a strong green light shoots up from the dungeon into the sky like a flare. After the flash, the golden gate keeps glowing in the middle of the dark forest. The shaking stops, and he wonders what that light was while calming the frightened little wolf. But suddenly, a new red message appears in front of the golden gate for him. The screen warns that the requirements to rank up the dungeon have not been met yet. With this, the boy understands there are specific conditions required to level up. The system informs that the gate to an unexplored sector is locked for now. To unlock the gate, the requirement is simply to rank up his dungeon. He then understands that to open that door, he must first raise the dungeon's level. At that moment, the twin dragon appears and asks what all that commotion is about. The protagonist turns around surprised and calls out the name of the creature that just arrived. The youth then asks the dragon if dungeons can really rank up normally. With a worried expression, he asks if that is not something that usually happens. With a confused expression, the creature says it has never heard of anything like that before. Hitoya wonders what happens if the dungeon ranks up, but the dragon does not know. They stare at the golden gate, and the protagonist thinks his dungeon is quite unusual. The boy then remembers the message about the unexplored sector and gets very curious. He imagines that place is a space no one has ever managed to reach before. With a determined look, the youth wonders what might be waiting for him in there. He thanks the small wolf for finding that mysterious gate for everyone. But suddenly, a new system window appears in front of them with a message. The screen states that the first sacred arc has been unlocked and its seal released. The protagonist then turns to the twin dragon and asks for their names. He asks if they could finally tell him what their names are right now. But the dragon's two heads just stare at him in silence with a suspicious look. With an awkward expression, the boy said is okay if they do not want to tell. Suddenly, he feels a strange energy and goes on alert from the unexpected situation. The dragon also notices the noise and says it is the sound of a gate opening. The protagonist then understands that another challenger has just entered his dungeon. The red warning screen appears announcing that a new invader has been detected in the dungeon. A man with a battle-worn hand appears and says he is going to destroy that dungeon. Riding a giant dragon, Alvaro says he will crush and sell every piece of that place. A system screen identifies him as the Great Swordsman Alvaro, level 66. The twin dragon panics upon seeing the boss, and Hitoya realizes it is the invader's leader. The protagonist understands this new enemy does not compare to the others he has already beaten. He recalls his defeats but knows he must stop the villain to end the suffering. With that, the boy decides to put an end to this and will use all the skills he has gained to face him. Determined, he says he will use everything he has to finally defeat the invader's boss. Then the youth activates his stealth shot skill, and a phantom attack is fired. But to his surprise, Alvaro blocks the attack with his sword without any difficulty. The protagonist cannot believe his phantom attack was blocked so easily by the boss. With a mocking smile, the invader's leader stares at him from atop his giant dragon. He then asks why the boy is sneaking around like a coward. The youth is surprised, as the enemy has already managed to pinpoint his exact location. Alvaro glares at him and says so he is the F-ranked dungeon boss everyone talks about. From high up in the tree, the protagonist faces the villain and his army of dragon invaders. The boss then notices the twin dragon's presence and calls out to it with a look of disdain. The creature panics hearing its name, and he comments that its collars are missing. The invader's leader says he does not know what happened, but he does not care about it. Because to him, tools that do not obey their masters are completely useless. Trembling with fear, the dragon's two heads begin to shake before their former master. Hitoya steps in front of the creature and yells that they are nobody's tools. But the boss just scoffs and asks if the materials are now trying to protect the tools. With a serious look, the protagonist faces the villain without showing any fear of him. Alvaro then orders his men to charge and wipe out everyone standing in front of them. With that, the twin dragon's two heads look at each other and seem to have made a decision. One of the heads then opens its mouth and charges a powerful blue energy sphere. The system announces that the Hail Flame of Hyuan's skill has been activated in battle. And right after, the other head activates the Fold Flame of Cain to attack as well. The two combined attacks fly toward the invader army and cause an explosion. The protagonist is surprised to see the twin dragon's skill attacks in action. With the attack, the invader's movements stop, and he notices they have fallen back. Hitoya thanks the creature and says it is his chance to finish them all at once. He then combines his Windblade skill with another skill he possesses. With this, he creates a curved blade that has the power to bend its trajectory in mid-air. The attack hits multiple enemies at once, and they do not understand how they were struck. Furious, Alvaro says he will finish off the traitorous dragon first and handle the rest later. He then orders his great dragon to charge and devour the creature without any mercy. The twin dragon gets scared seeing the giant monster coming its way to attack. The invader's boss then uses his power to place a magic collar on its neck. The creature realizes that it is the subjugation collar that forces it to obey its master. Alvaro explains that monsters have no choice and must obey humans, period. With an evil smile, he threatens the creature, saying next time he will give the order. To force its obedience, he says he will order it to destroy its other half. One of the creature's heads panics at the command and looks at its other half. At that moment, the other head yells for its sibling to be careful and stay away from him. In a panic, one of the heads tries to run, but the other advances to attack it mercilessly. The great dragon then opens its giant mouth and charges to consume the small creature. With no chance to escape, one of the heads thinks it will not be able to get away in time. But suddenly, the protagonist appears and saves the creature from the monster's fatal strike. The small creature is surprised and wonders if it is still functioning after the attack. He then throws the little head far away to safety and faces the enemies alone. Alvaro gets furious and orders his men to catch him and not let him escape no matter what. Hitoya notices that one of the heads is trembling in his arms, deeply terrified. He understands the creature is still terrified of the one who branded that fear into it. With a sad expression, the youth apologizes to the dragon for everything it has gone through. He then tells the creature to run and hide deep in the forest to stay safe. The dragon is shocked and asks if he is really going to fight the boss and the invaders all by himself. At that moment, one of the hunters spots him in the tree and orders everyone to shoot him down. The protagonist tells the dragon not to worry because he will be fine in the battle. With a confident smile, he says he will wait there until the creature is free. The dragon's two heads look at each other, moved by their friend's brave attitude. Hitoya then jumps down from the tree and prepares to face the invader army alone. With that, the men yell for everyone to take down the dungeon boss as fast as possible. The protagonist says he will not let anyone get hurt anymore and will end the fight. He activates his Vision plus 10 and Detect skills to see how many enemies are left. With his powers, the youth dodges the attacks and uses his skills to counterattack. He uses his wind blades and phantom attacks to eliminate the enemies one by one. One of the surviving invaders is shocked by the protagonist's strength and skill. With almost all his men defeated, the youth says now there is only one left. Hitoya faces Alvaro, the last opponent left for him to defeat in the dungeon. The invader's boss calls him useless and does not seem to care about his men. He then orders his great dragon to activate its devouring surge skill. With this, the creature opens its giant mouth and begins sucking in everything around it. The protagonist is surprised to see the great dragon's skill being activated. Then the giant monster begins to devour its own master's men without any pity. Hitoya is completely shocked and cannot believe what is happening right in front of him. The invaders scream in terror as they are consumed by their boss's giant creature. The boy is horrified to see the monster devouring its own allies in battle. With its red eyes glowing, the creature looks even stronger than before. The youth then hears Alvaro's voice explaining his great dragon's power. The villain reveals that his monster gets stronger and bigger with each one it devours. With the devouring surge skill activated, the creature becomes a greater threat. The great dragon then spreads its wings and prepares to launch a powerful attack. It charges a large purple energy sphere in its mouth to fire at the youth. Hitoya panics upon seeing the flames, knowing the entire dungeon is in danger. He decides he must stop the monster at all costs to protect his monster friends. But the boy does not know how he will manage to stop such a giant, powerful dragon by himself. At that moment, he has a brilliant idea and seems to have found a solution. He wonders if breaking the great dragon's collar will stop it like it did with the other one. With a new plan in mind, he decides he will destroy the creature's collar first. Then his wind blade flies at high speed toward the monster's neck. But Alvaro steps in front and blocks the attack with his sword effortlessly. The villain then moves quickly and tries to strike the protagonist with his giant sword. The youth is shocked by the speed and strength of his opponent, who is vastly superior. With a mocking smile, the invader's boss calls him an annoying dungeon boss. He says he will not let the boy break his dragon's collar under any circumstances. Hitoya gets tense, knowing he will not be able to beat the boss and the dragon at the same time. Meanwhile, the great dragon keeps charging its fire attack to destroy everything. The protagonist knows that if he does not stop the monster, the entire dungeon will be wiped out. He realizes that if the boss tried so hard to stop him from breaking the creature's collar, that means the collar is indeed the core of his control over the giant monster. With this, the youth decides he will destroy that collar and activates his curved blade. Alvaro says he will not let him touch the collar, and with that he activates a new skill. The invader's boss uses earth-splitting quake and launches a devastating attack on the ground. With this, a giant crater forms and the protagonist is hit dead on by the energy explosion. The great dragon lets out an evil laugh while Hitoya stares at the scene in shock, unable to react. The youth panics knowing the monster's fire attack is almost ready to be fired. At that moment, the giant creature opens its mouth and releases the final blast to destroy everything around. With no time to lose, the boy says he cannot hesitate and charges forward to try and stop the beast's attack. He thinks he needs to protect the dungeon and will combine his skills to destroy the monster's collar. But suddenly, the twin dragon appears and prepares to interfere in the battle to help him. Alvaro is surprised to see the small creature showing up out of nowhere to ruin his plans. Hitoya was also not expecting this and looks at his friends with an expression of shock on his face. The invader's boss wonders if that is really the twin dragon he thought was defeated. The creature tells the youth to focus on breaking the collar, while they hold off the boss and the dragon. With that, the two heads advance and distract the two enemies with their combined fire and ice attacks. Alvaro is annoyed by the interference and says they are just a bunch of useless pests meddling. He then asks if the creatures really think they can face him and win in a fight. The villain furiously yells for them not to dare oppose him and launches a powerful attack. The creature is struck full force by the blow and cannot defend against the enemy's strength. Seeing his friends sacrificing themselves, Hitoya decides he will put an end to that dungeon's nightmare. With that, the twin dragon falls severely injured by the dragon invader's boss's attack. Using his friend's distraction, the protagonist takes the chance and strikes the giant dragon's neck. With this, the monster's subjugation collar shatters into 1,000 pieces from the precise blow. Alvaro is thrown far away by the force of the impact and loses control of the giant creature. Lying on the ground, the invader's boss wonders how a monster managed to break the collar. He thinks the subjugation ring is an item of absolute control meant to dominate monsters. But the dungeon boss broke it, and Alvaro wonders what the boy truly is. Even so, the villain gets up with a furious look and does not seem the least bit shaken. He yells that he will not leave anything behind, not even the dust of that youth in the dungeon. The villain then says he will crush everything to pieces and prepares a new powerful attack. But to his surprise, the man notices his sword is cracked after their last clash. At that moment, Hitoya descends from the skies at high speed to strike the invader's boss. He remembers his friends and that he has already decided to do whatever he can to protect everyone. With a determined look, the youth says he will end all of this right now without hesitation. With a powerful kick, he hits the villain dead, leaving him unable to defend against the blow. After the fight, an intense light shines at the dungeon gate, drawing everyone's attention. Hidden away, the small wolf watches the scene with curiosity and a bit of fear over what happened. The protagonist looks exhausted, but the twin dragon is by his side to support him after the battle. Defeated, Alvaro still calls the youth and his friends bags of useless materials. He struggles to get up and yells at the protagonist not to dare look down on him. But suddenly, a giant shadowy fiend-like silhouette emerges from the shadows behind the fallen villain. The great dragon glares at its former master and says he spent his life squeezing others dry. The creature says it could not fight back against the caller's power, and thus remain chained to him. It says this makes it guilty too, so it will take responsibility for his actions. With that, Alvaro panics and tries desperately to run away from the furious creature. The giant monster then opens its mouth and lunges to consume its former master without mercy. The system screen reports that the number of challengers in the dungeon has finally reached 0. Hitoya then realizes that the long battle against the dragon invaders is finally over. A system window pops up and asks if he wants to add the great dragon to his dungeon. The boy tells the creature he can add it to the dungeon and asks what it wants to do. The giant monster thinks for a moment and then decides it will leave that place. With a smile on his face, the protagonist understands the creature's decision and respects it. The twin dragon is surprised and asks if he is sure, since it is a rare opportunity. But the youth says the monster suffered for a long time and that it will not become an invader. He says he is sure the creature has things it wants to do out there in the world. The great dragon then reveals it is going to free its companions who are still trapped. It talks about the other monsters that are still enslaved by the dragon invaders. The creature remembers when it was just a beast chained to them with no will of its own. It says it did nothing but consume lives, but as a proud dragon it will change. It turns to the protagonist and the twin dragon, saying this is its way of redeeming itself. With that, the giant monster thanks everyone and flies away to fulfill its new mission. The twin creature comments that the giant monster is gone, and Hitoya nods in agreement. The protagonist looks at his friends with a relieved smile on his face after the long battle. Then he turns and asks the twin dragon if they also want to go back to the outside world. The creature rubs against him and says honestly that dungeon is a very strange place. But it says it does not hate the place and reminds him that the boy asked for their names before the fight. With that, one of the heads introduces itself as Ada, and the other reveals its name as Yada. Hitoya gets very happy and hugs both, thanking them for finally telling him their names. At that moment, golden system window pops up warning that the dungeon's rank up will begin. The screen then identifies the F-rank dungeon while the twin dragon stares at the light in surprise. The system window informs that the requirements to rank up the dungeon have been met. With this, the protagonist is completely shocked and does not understand what is going on there. The system then announces to everyone that the forest mausoleum is leveling up right now. A strong golden light wraps around the entire dungeon as the place's evolution process begins. The youth and the twin dragon float in the middle of the light without understanding what is happening. The system screen then confirms that the dungeon ranked up and is now an E-rank mausoleum. Hitoya and the twin dragon are confused and shocked by the dungeon's sudden level change. He then wonders what that is, because the dungeon's terrain has completely changed. Rubble appears out of nowhere, and he wonders if the outer layer of the dungeon walls collapsed. With a confused expression, the protagonist questions what a dungeon rank up actually is. Suddenly he hears a yelp, and to his surprise, the small white wolf is falling from the sky. The boy is relieved his wolf friend is okay, but asks what is wrong with him. The little creature barks frantically and jumps from side to side trying to communicate. Hitoya says he does not understand wolf language but knows the pet wants to say something. The small animal keeps insisting, and the protagonist wonders what it wants to say. He does not quite understand what the little wolf is trying to say but feels it is something important. With this, the youth decides to follow his small friend deeper into the dungeon's forest. The little creature guides him through the dungeon's new area that appeared after the rank up. They reach the mushroom field, and the boy is shocked to see they are moving. The glowing green little mushrooms bounce and wiggle as if they were alive. The system screen then identifies all of them as being level 1 monsters. Hitoya's jaw drops as he discovers the mushrooms were monsters all along. But suddenly, the youth notices something even more surprising and is left speechless. He sees that the sealed golden gate he found earlier is now open and glowing. The system window reports that the requirements were met and the dark gate was opened. With this, the protagonist is amazed to see that the unexplored sector has been unlocked. He then understands that this was what the little wolf was trying to tell him about. The youth stares at the open gate with the little wolf on his shoulder and surrounded by the mushrooms. The twin dragon then asks if he really intends to enter that new place. Hitoya thinks that if the monsters are from his dungeon, then they are on his side, and he also believes that if he enters, he will be able to learn more about that mysterious place. With this in mind, the protagonist and his friends head down a long staircase to the underground. But to everyone's surprise, they end up reaching a dead end at the bottom of the path. Hitoya then notices a golden glow and wonders if there is something buried there in the ground. Suddenly, the little mushroom monsters start bouncing excitedly around the boy. To his surprise, the little creatures begin digging up the floor using their own heads. In a joint effort, they all dig at the spot where the protagonist saw the mysterious glow. The youth is shocked as he realizes the mushrooms are unearthing the item for him. A golden chest emerges from the ground, and the system announces that the rank reward is materialized. Hitoya's jaw drops seeing the sixth sacred arc, and he realizes it is a treasure chest. The system screen then confirms that the mausoleum's rank-up reward has appeared. The boy understands that one of the changes of raising the dungeon's level is gaining treasures. With this, the twin dragon gets super excited and yells that they found a real treasure. The creature then wonders if more treasures will appear if the dungeon keeps evolving. But Hitoya gets serious and realizes that if there are treasures, then challengers will come to steal them. He worries because the reward might end up attracting even more enemies to the dungeon. This means the treasure could actually be a huge bait for new invaders. But the twin dragon says they can think about that later and encourages him to see what is inside. The protagonist decides he will check the inside but asks everyone to step back for safety. Carefully, he approaches the ark and wonders what could be inside that sacred chest. The youth then places his hand on the lid, and the treasure glows intensely as it is opened by him. Inside the chest, he finds a golden item called Prometheus's right hand. The boy wonders what it is and notices it looks like an accessory, such as a ring. A system screen then pops up and identifies it as an equipment item with a special effect. With this, the protagonist is surprised, realizing it is absolutely not a common ring. He then feels the item's immense power and is shocked by the energy radiating from it. The twin creature wonders what the effect is, while the little wolf thinks it is a flashy power. The youth thinks the power will be useful, but he seems to have some kind of apprehension about the item. He realizes the power could lead the dungeon into more fights, and he does not want to use it if he can avoid it. So the boy tells his friends he cannot show the power just yet, and the creature stares at him. The creature thinks about the unknown treasure and all the mysteries of that strange dungeon. It remembers the dungeon leveling up and how strong the boss is to break the colors. With this, the dragon stares at the protagonist and wonders who he really is to have so much power. The youth then says he wants to protect the dungeon more firmly without using the treasure's power. With an idea in mind, he turns to the mushrooms and says he wants to borrow their strength. The little creatures are confused and do not understand what the dungeon boss means. He explains that with the mushroom's power, they can change how the dungeon works right now. Then the boy invites everyone to work together and build a hideout in the dungeon. With that, everyone starts digging the ground together, wolves and mushrooms in a massive effort. They stack all the rubble that appeared after the rank up to build walls. After everything, they cover the outside with plants so it all blends in with the forest. With a smile on his face, he looks very proud of the result of all their hard work. Then he announces to all the monsters that their hideout is finally complete. The youth thanks everyone for the help, and the twin creature replies somewhat awkwardly. The creature then asks if they can go inside the house now, and the boy agrees excitedly. Once inside, he explains that fire and blades cannot reach them in there. He also shows a hidden tunnel that serves as an emergency exit to the forest. The place is a bit dark and cold, but all the monsters look very cozy together. With this, the protagonist says that even if something scary happens, they will be safe there. After all the work, the youth watches everyone sleeping soundly in the hideout. He still worries about many things but wants to believe the rank up is a good thing. The boy remembers that in his old world, ranking up was an endless competition. But he realizes that in this world, leveling up is different, because he gets stronger. And with this strength, he can protect more and more friends living in his dungeon. With this, the youth decides to step outside again, since one never knows when new enemies might appear. But without him noticing, one of the twin creatures' heads opens an eye to watch him. Once outside, he checks if the escape tunnel is all good and clear of issues. Suddenly, the little wolf climbs onto his shoulder, and the boy wonders what it wants now. He then notices the dragon's two heads standing in the water, looking restless. With the little wolf on his shoulder, he asks Ada what happened to make her so agitated. The creature then stares at him and asks why the dungeon boss tries so hard for them. With this, Ada then asks who the dungeon boss really is, leaving the boy confused. The dragon's two heads say they want to know more about him and ask if he has a family. They also ask what his family is like and if they look like the protagonist. The youth feels awkward about the situation and does not know what to answer the two curious creatures. He then replies that his parents are normal humans, even though he looks like a monster now. With a serious expression, the boy begins to remember his past life and his earliest memory. Then we see the image of a little boy in a destroyed place that looks like a junkyard. He recalls that his oldest memory is feeling very cold and thinking he was hungry. But he remembers two people saying that even if something bad happened, he would be safe there. Then we see the happy little boy calling that couple mom and dad with a smile on his face. He shares that even without ever seeing his biological parents, that couple welcomed him with open arms. The youth remembers waving at them, but right after, a massive disaster struck suddenly. With that, his house was swallowed by debris, and his adopted parents never came back for him. Back in the present, he tells the creatures that he probably did not even look like them. But he always hoped to be able to live the same way his parents lived. With a small smile, he reveals he has been thinking about that the whole time since he met them. The little wolf and the dragon get emotional, and the boy thanks them, saying everything is okay now. The twin creature thinks it still does not know about the boss's level or how he broke the collars, but it feels it now somewhat understands why he is in that specific dungeon. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a large futuristic city known as the Capital City. The scene then takes us to the inner district of the capital's underground research lab. There, a young man reads a formal request to investigate and destroy the forest mausoleum. Lying on the sofa, he says sometimes it pays off to read letters from boring people. With a smile on his face, the boy gets surprised by what he just read in the document. He then comments that it is a bizarre dungeon and that they will have to study it completely. Back in the dungeon, everyone feels a strong tremor and the protagonist goes on alert. The screen warns that new challengers have been detected and a group of invaders appears at the gate. The twin dragon gets startled and comments that if the dragon invaders are gone, then it is a new faction. With a confident smile, Otoya says everything is fine because he will handle the situation himself. Determined, he states that no matter who comes, he will protect that place and everyone in it. With that, the youth leaps from above and surprises the invaders, who are not expecting an attack. One of the men recognizes him as the dungeon boss, and all 6 of them activate their skills. The protagonist notices that all 6 challengers have skills and that the average level has gone up. Without panicking, he gets ready for the fight and says he will take everything step by step. With a determined look, he declares he will win so he can protect all his friends. He then remembers the invader's boss's skill that tormented everyone before. The boy says that from now on, he will use that very same skill to protect his dungeon. One of the invaders panics as he recognizes the dragon invader's boss's skill. Terrified, one of the men yells for everyone to dodge and activates his own skill. But it is too late and a massive blue energy explosion hits the group of invaders head on. One of the invaders gets caught in the explosion, while the others use his skill to float. With a furious look, the protagonist yells for all of them to go back to their world. He then warns that if they return next time, he will have absolutely no mercy on them. With that, the group's leader orders a retreat and opens the dungeon gate to flee. One of the men complains because if they return empty-handed, they will not get paid. But the leader says that will not be a problem as a small drone appears. The little fish-shaped robot has glowing red eyes and stares at the protagonist. The boy uses his vision and discovers that it is a robot camera and is not alive. He understands they were not there to clear the dungeon as they escape through the gate. The gate then closes, and one of the men stays outside watching from afar. The youth is confused and wonders what those guys really wanted. Suddenly, he seems to have an epiphany about what just happened in the dungeon. The system screen announces that he acquired 6 new skills from the invaders who fled. The protagonist gets thoughtful, not knowing what kind of enemies will come next. But he knows he is gaining more options, and that is a certainty at least. The twin dragon congratulates him and says the fight ended in the blink of an eye. With an excited smile, the boy calls his friends Ada and Yada over to him. Suddenly, the protagonist seems to remember something important and gets an idea. He says he is going to use one of the skills he just acquired in the last battle. With that, the youth activates the Sky Swim skill and starts floating upside down. The dragon's 2 heads get excited and say that now the boss can fly too. But suddenly he loses control of the skill and starts falling toward the ground. With this, the boy ends up crashing hard into some bushes, startling his friends. Worried, the 2 creatures fly over to see if he got hurt and ask if he is okay. Hanging upside down, he says mastering a skill right off the bat is pretty tough. Soon he gets the hang of it and says it feels like he is swimming through the sky very smoothly. Then the youth takes the moment to ask Ada and Yada when they started using skills. One of the heads replies that it was right after they hatched from their eggs. The protagonist is shocked and asks if all monsters are like that since they are born. The creature explains that not all of them are, like the wolves, and the boy asks about humans. The twin creature reveals that only monsters are born with skills and that humans cannot be. With this, he understands why breaking the invaders' weapons stopped them from using skills. 8 explains that magic tools are made using monsters with skills as materials. The youth is completely shocked and speechless upon hearing that terrifying revelation. He then realizes that all the weapons he destroyed were monsters and feels horrified. The twin creature calls him a softie and says he does not need to make that face. She then explains that to make magic tools, they have to use monsters as materials. The collars are not just to force obedience, but also to drag the monsters outside. She says the tools are monsters that never made it back home and still serve even after everything. The creature then says that when he destroys a tool, he is actually saving them. With a relieved smile, the boy says that if that is true, then it is a very good thing. He thinks there are tragedies he does not know about, but he wants to protect the dungeon with everything he has. Meanwhile, in the city, the young scientist mocks the invader who fled the dungeon. With a smile, he says at least it gave him a reason to come to the East Capital. The lord of the East capital, Pedro Detless, says honestly none of them are worth it. But with a smile on his face, the man comments that even so, he is a lucky guy. Because for the East capital lord's request, he is just the right person for the job. He then praises the invader for doing a good job fulfilling his small mission. Professor Alain Tulin says the footage the drone captured came out very well. Pedro is shocked as not even he, the lord of the city, has seen that item before. He wonders if that is one of the knight's inventions with the floating words. The footage shows the protagonist, and Tulin says this wraps up the preliminary reconnaissance. With the invader kneeling before him, he says their next step is quite obvious. The city lord then asks the professor what their next step would be. With a smile, the young genius replies that it will be an on-site investigation of the dungeon. He says they will study that dungeon inside and out, and then destroy it. Back in the dungeon, the youth plays with his friends and says it is okay to fly. But suddenly a red warning screen pops up alerting about a new challenger. The system speaks the names of the challengers. The dungeon gate glows, and the boy wonders what kind of enemies have arrived. The alert system remains active while the dungeon gate stays open and ominous. Hidden away, the protagonist watches the entrance but cannot see anyone nearby. With this, he wonders if there is no one there and gets confused by the strange situation. He thinks maybe they are hiding when a mysterious voice calls him the dungeon boss. The boy is startled by the sudden voice and jumps back on maximum alert from the scare. He tries to figure out where the voice is coming from when a figure in a white lab coat appears out of nowhere. The man then appears floating upside down and says it is a pleasure to meet him. With this, the protagonist is in shock because the guy simply showed up out of nowhere right in front of him. He stares at the floating man and does not understand what is happening there in that moment. The youth notices he has never seen a skill like that and that there is no status screen. Down on the ground, he realizes he has never faced a challenger like that before in his life. With a serious look, the boy asks the man who he is and what he wants there. The scientist says he came to clear the dungeon and asks where the treasure is hidden. The protagonist then remembers the arc and realizes the invader's target is the treasure. The man confirms his target is the treasure but that his goal is a complete sweep. The boy is confused by the term and wonders what this complete sweep means. Tulin asks if he does not know and begins to explain what happens when the treasure is taken. He then reveals that when that happens, the dungeon simply vanishes from the world. The scientist explains that when a challenger takes the treasure, the dungeon and the monsters disappear. With this, he says everything vanishes and that it is simply how the world works. With a furious look, the protagonist shouts that he will never allow that to happen. The scientist smiles and says he figured the youth would say something like that while his drones surround him. With a quick gesture, Tulin points his hand toward the dungeon boss to attack. With that, several fish drones fly at high speed toward the protagonist. The youth realizes the enemy has many weapons and prepares for the counterattack. He then uses his curved blade to destroy the drones while dodging their attacks. But the scientist does not look surprised at all and says he was expecting that reaction. To the protagonist's surprise, the fish drones simply regenerate in mid-air. Hitoya is shocked because his attacks are having absolutely no effect against the enemy. The scientist taunts him, saying he is not very good against this kind of thing. The boy understands the enemy is immune to cuts and wonders how he will fight against this. Suddenly, Ada appears and charges a blue energy sphere in her mouth to attack. The creature then fires a powerful ice beam at the scientist's drones. The youth is surprised by the unexpected help from his friend, who arrived just in time. He notices that was Ada's skill attack and all the drones got frozen. Right after, Yeta also attacks with his flame and tells the enemy not to touch the boss. Tulin recognizes the creature as the dragon the invaders kept and seems interested. Then the small creature fires a golden fire beam at the scientist to help. But Tulin simply stops the attack with his hands and seems to absorb all the energy. With their attacks proving useless, the dragon's two heads get furious and growl at the enemy. The scientist floats and observes the twin dragon with a look of curiosity on his face. He then notices there is no subjugation collar on the creature and is surprised. With an expression of shock, Tulin asks how they managed to break free from the collar. He approaches the dragon and asks how they took the collars off their necks. But the twin creature does not answer and just glares at him with a defiant, furious look. The scientist then says that if they are not in the mood to talk, that is fine with him. Suddenly, the protagonist appears behind him and surprise attacks him with a powerful kick. With this, Hitoya activates his stealth shot skill and launches a phantom attack at the scientist. Tulin dodges the attack and says the boy does pretty scary things with his powers. With a serious expression, the youth tells the invader to stay away from his monster friends. The scientist looks at him and says he needs some time to calm down and that it is enough for today. With that, the man simply vanishes into thin air and tells the protagonist he will see him around. Hitoya and the dragon are confused and wonder if the enemy really retreated from the battle. The system screen then reports that the number of challengers in the dungeon is now 0. The youth is surprised because he did not gain any new skill and tries to activate his ability. To his shock, the system informs him that there are no skills available to be acquired. He does not understand, because he was supposed to acquire the skills of any challenger who failed in the dungeon. The boy remembers that the more enemies he defeats, the stronger he and the dungeon become. But the scientist has unknown stats and skills and is unlike any opponent he has faced. With a determined look, the youth says if that is how the world works, he will face it head on. At the Lord's mansion, Tulin says he changed his mind and wants to do something else before the complete sweep. With this, the Lord of the East Capital, Pedro Deathless, asks the scientist if something happened. The professor replies with a smile that it is all just for his personal research. He then reveals he wants to capture the twin dragon, since it would disappear with the complete sweep. Pedro gets excited and says in that case, he would love it if the dungeon boss were captured too. The Lord comments that the boss would be worth a lot, and Tulin says he will provide more personnel for the mission. The scientist then states that they can arrange as many containment collars as needed. With a smile on his face, the professor tells Pedro just not to get in the way of his plans. The city lord immediately agrees and seems very pleased with the genius's new plan. Pedro guarantees their skills are good, because they have taken down the great dragon before. The scene shows the monster's horns, and the lord reveals that Tulin was the one who hunted that creature.